years of notes dating back to 2011 from the very beginning of my relationship that were taken by my doctor, who I was reporting the abuse to.
That doctor was Amber's therapist at the time. We looked at notes the doctor took during some of their sessions, which show that as far back as 2012, Amber was talking about physical abuse. In January of that year, she told her therapist Depp hit her, threw her on the floor. 8 months after that, he ripped her nightgown, threw her on the bed. And in 2013, the therapist's notes say he threw her against a wall and threatened to kill her.
Her notes represented years of real-time explanations of what was going on.
And you interviewed Dr. Bonnie Jacobs.
Correct.
And you looked at her notes.
Correct.
And you know that Miss Jacobs, Dr. Jacobs, doesn't know anything about the version of what happened in Australia until Miss Heard had already been sued, correct?
I believe she was not in treatment with Dr. Jacobs at the time the Australia incident occurred. So that would be correct.
You know that Miss Heard stopped seeing Dr. Jacobs in August 2014.
That's correct.
And she didn't go back until after she got sued, right?
I believe that's the date. I'd have to look to make sure, but I believe that you're correct.
Yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Sorry it's been a while since I released a video, but I definitely had to touch on Amber Heard's suppressed evidence being the therapist's notes, given that I'm a therapist. So here are my 2 cents about those documents. Number one, I just find it odd that her therapist's notes are handwritten and in long form. It's just in my experience and from my colleagues, we all tend to work smarter and not harder. So, definitely using electronic health records and also abbreviation is key. Another thing is that therapy notes are not an investigation. They are not proof that something happened. It's just us documenting what the client has reported to us, how it informs the person's individual treatment. Like we're working on that individual's mental health, not the mental health of their spouse, father, mother, sister. I find it interesting that she wants to release those records partially just to prove, I guess she feels like it proves that the abuse occurred. All that the notes prove is that she just reported it during those times that was listed, but she didn't want to release this to the public in its entirety. Now, I'm not saying she should, because I think therapy sessions are private and that's between you and your therapist. We don't really need to know what's discussed, but since you want to pull from the whole thing so that there's full context, because I'm pretty sure there's probably some things you don't want people to know that might confirm Dr. Curry's diagnosis. Additionally, just pointing to the therapy notes, it's no way to really cross-examine a document. The reason I titled the video, "Why should we believe Amber Heard's therapist when she doesn't trust her own medical professionals?" It's because I kind of rehashed some of the old clips from the court where she's actually discrediting her nurse Erin Filati. So let's take a look at that.
When did you provide a client history to Erin Filati?
Never.
Did you first get assigned Erin Filati?
I believe September of 2014.
Okay. Now it says here that client reports a history of substance abuse, including an addiction to cocaine and liquor. When did you have a history of substance abuse, including addiction to cocaine and liquor?
I did not. There's a lot of mistakes in here.
Okay. Did you ever use cocaine?
I have. I used cocaine a few times when I was 18, 19 years old, but stopped using any drugs, including cocaine, when I got into a relationship with my ex-partner. She was very against that, and I'm glad for it.
Okay. Then it also says here that where am I? Move up a little. Here we go. Client admits to history of anxiety, eating disorder, attention deficit disorder, bipolar disorder, codependence issues, and occasional insomnia. When have you had an eating disorder?
I've never had an eating disorder.
Okay. When have you been diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
I've never been diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
When have you been diagnosed with codependence issues?
I have never been diagnosed with codependency issues, although arguably at the time, from where I stand now, I can see that the relationship I was in with Johnny was certainly codependent.
Okay.
But I wouldn't have reported that at the time. I didn't know about that.
All right, and then can we move up a little bit more, Michelle? Thank you. It has, per report from JD, Debbie RN, Dr. Kipper, client AH has reportedly been experiencing increased anxiety and agitation recently and has had several outbursts of anger and rage. Were you present for this being reported to Ms. Filati?
No, this is the detox.
Okay.
This is Johnny's.
And it also says your mood has been labile. What, if any, outbursts of anger and rage and labile mood did you exhibit during the detox?
None that she would have seen. None. I was there for Johnny's detox. This is what Johnny was going through. This is not me.
Okay.
I find this clip interesting because Amber Heard is basically discrediting her own nurse. So she's saying, oh, I never gave her a client history. Anytime you meet with a medical professional, they always ask background information questions. Like, how would she know? I mean, I guess since Amber Heard's a public figure, she could look up some of this, like where she was born and how old she is. But a lot of the stuff you do report to your medical professional. They can't treat you without having a proper history. That's just how when we do our cases, our case conceptualization, we always have what we know based on what the client has told us. So I find her to be like, this just doesn't seem consistent with how medical professionals document. You're not calling Nurse Filati a liar. You're actually calling yourself a liar, because all a medical professional does is report what you tell them. Okay. Maybe she could have misheard you, but there's just really no incentive for someone who spent years going to school, thousands of dollars in loans, and has a license to they have to keep up, to lie or to make up things in a client's record. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen. There are professionals who get their license revoked, but it is such a small number. And I did actually check Nurse Filati, and she happens to be in good standing still, and there's no disciplinary actions. And the substance use I also find interesting, because it says client has a history of substance use with cocaine and liquor. You guys, this is what we call minimization. This is a cognitive distortion that we all engage in this from time to time. But you can see she's minimizing her substance use by saying, oh no, I just did cocaine, here and there. I never had a cocaine problem. Let's revisit this clip.
You made a pretty big accusation, or not accusation, but you allege you can basically prove that she's perjuring herself on the stand, because Miss Amber Heard said on the stand, we're going to call it the Coca-Cola, okay? You told in the interview, and you said to me, it's a lie. She claims that she hasn't used the Coca-Cola since she was 18 years old. Sir, can you tell us if that's true?
I mean, no, that's not true. And it was, Never Back Down was my first kind of like role in doing something big on that scale. And we were all young and we thought like, we're going to be stars. Right. And I was I was at her place that like first time we hung out. And she's in the kitchen and she goes, "You party?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I party." And she whips out some Coca-Colas and starts doing it. And she's like, "Would you like some?" I go, "Oh, I didn't know that's what party meant." The thing I find really irritating is that it's just lies. Like, at least, Johnny Depp being flawed, alcoholic, drug addict, at least he's like open and admitting it.
Yep.
With her, it's like there's so many people who know that it's not true. Why isn't anyone saying anything? The other confusing part is like, how are there no text messages about, from her talking about drugs outside of like weed and mushrooms? Because here's another thing. So I'm in her apartment and I'm like, "Can I smoke in here?" She's like, drunk. And I was smoking a cigarette and she goes, "I would much rather be addicted to this," referring to cocaine, "than cigarettes." And I was like, whoa, what?
You were around and witnessed her using Coca-Cola.
Yes, man, of course. There was, there was one night I was hanging out with her after work. She was upset that production was going to ask her representatives that they wanted to start doing testing because they thought something was wrong.
Whoa.
The one thing that she was actually truthful about was that Amber said Tasha was against like drugs and alcohol. 100% true. Because Amber had warned me specifically, "Hey, Tasha's coming in for the weekend. I probably won't be able to hang out. And if she's on set, please don't mention anything about anything. She's sober, doesn't do anything." I said, "Okay, of course I won't."
When did you have a history of substance abuse, including addiction to cocaine and liquor?
I did not. There's a lot of mistakes in here.
Okay. Did you ever use cocaine?
I have. I used cocaine a few times when I was 18, 19 years old, but stopped using any drugs, including cocaine, when I got into a relationship with my ex-partner. She was very against that.
And so there's the rewriting of history. So she's trying to say, well, no, this isn't even me. Like, this is Johnny Depp's record inside of my chart for some reason. So I find that hard to believe. And a report that another professional receives from, a doctor or therapist is not going to be in front of the client. They're going to like request those records or, get them somehow with your permission. And then they're just going to document what was told to them or what they reviewed in that record. But she just goes out of her way to really discredit any part of her own medical records that paint her in what she would perceive as a bad light. I don't see this as being in a bad light. This is just stating things as they are, and people are very complex. Like she said, there's no perfect person. To me, this is just like, it reads like any other medical record, and I've seen, hundreds. This medical record with these histories of like bipolar disorder, which she also denies. Now, I will say something about this. She could have said she had a history of BPD. I really want to know if she had been diagnosed prior to Dr. Curry with this, because sometimes people abbreviate bipolar disorder as BPD. And BPD is also known to be borderline personality disorder. So I wonder if that could have been confusion and maybe she thought she meant bipolar, but we'll never know, I guess. So basically, she's just going to show that she doesn't even trust her own medical records. So why should we just trust the ones that she wants to cherry pick? Now let's move on to where Amber Heard received treatment after the December 2015 incident. And this was the incident, if you recall, where Depp allegedly dragged her by her hair throughout the penthouse, ripping out clumps of her hair. She was slapped, head-butted, allegedly. And so let's take a look at this cross-examination.
You went to see Dr. Kipper's office a couple days later.
That's right. He wasn't in the office.
Can we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 47, which is already in evidence? This is your medical record for December 17th, 2015, isn't it, Ms. Heard?
That's correct.
And this record doesn't document any physical injuries on you, does it?
I don't think so, no. I don't think I spoke to Kipper. I didn't speak to Kipper that day. And
but you went to Dr. Kipper's office and were seen, correct?
I went to Dr. Kipper's office for a concussion check.
Right. Okay. And this medical record is from that visit, correct?
Partially, yes.
Scroll down, please, if we could. The signature Kipper down below. This is the entirety of the medical record, right, Ms. Hurd?
Yes, what I meant by partial is I didn't talk about what happened to me. I didn't get into my injuries. I didn't get into what happened or ask for anything other than should I get some sort of scan done.
But this record doesn't document any physical injuries on you, does it?
I'd have to read it in full, but I don't know.
Well, let's do that. If we could please go, well, under skin on the second page, it reads intact, normal color, moisture, hair distribution, texture, turgor, no signs of, oh, this is going to be hard, cyanosis, mottling, jaundice.
It also says I'm a well-nourished male.
Right. I have no idea what that means.
I think this medical record's missing a lot of things.
Yeah, it doesn't document any physical injuries.
Doesn't seem to be documenting anything.
Probably because there was nothing to document, right, Ms. Hurd?
I disagree with you on that.
What I find interesting for this clip is, in typical fashion, as we've seen from Amber, she has her own definitions. And so in the beginning, she says, well, this is a partial record of this medical visit. So Camille scrolls down to show, no, in fact, this is the entirety of the medical record with Dr. Kipper's signature. And Amber explains, well, by partial, I mean, as in her definition is, I didn't tell them about the abuse that was going on. And that is not how you determine a partial or complete record. That record with the doctor's signature is indicating this is all that was discussed or done during this visit for that day. So it was complete. Additionally, you'll notice what Camille highlighted was there was no visible bruising, skin was intact, hair was fine. And see, a medical professional is trained to do physical exams and they can see these things. The therapist doesn't do a physical exam. They're not trained to do that. We just report what you tell us. So it just makes sense that she would want us to see the therapist notes and believe that over any of the medical records that we've seen come out in the court case. And it's also funny how she would think that that would be the smoking gun to her story being more believable is a self-report of a therapist versus a medical record where they physically examine you, your history, and do far more documentation that's not just self-report. The two professionals that she paid that were IPV experts did indicate that Ms. Hurd does have some traits that would indicate that she would be a perpetrator of IPV. Of course, they're there to make their client look better, in a legal case, but they can't stretch the truth but so far. I'm going to show you two clips to kind of refresh your memory.
You cannot testify that Johnny Depp was not abused, can you?
I can testify that he had physical acts of violence perpetrated on him as well as psychological aggressive acts perpetrated upon him.
No further questions. So you want to talk about cluster B, so let's do that for a minute. Borderline personality disorder is a risk factor for IPV.
As part of cluster B traits, yes.
Histrionic personality disorder is a risk factor for IPV.
Less so.
But it
Less so. Less so. I mean, it's a risk factor, but less so, yes.
Yeah.
Less so. Significantly less so.
All right. Do you understand that the testimony was ultimately that Ms. Hurd suffers from 2 personality disorders? Yes or no to my question?
Which was his only one diagnosis of, Ms. Hurd was diagnosed with that.
Yeah. And both of the diagnoses are in cluster B, and both of them are risk factors for IPV.
But both those cluster B things are, I'm not allowed to comment on the testing. So therefore, all I could say is that cluster B traits and I'll tell you what they are. And by the way, I testified this before, which was that, one, I don't expect perfection from my victims. Two,
I don't-
absolutely there were
you-
cluster B
you're-
traits Ms. Heard had. Absolutely, Ms. Heard had.
Given that you've
So there you have it. Confirmed that Amber perpetrated acts of IPV psychologically and physically upon Johnny Depp, and says absolutely Ms. Heard had cluster B traits. Now he stopped short of agreeing with Dr. Curry. Dr. Curry's forensic analysis indicated that she did meet the full criteria for borderline personality as well as histrionic. So the fact that she has traits, he's just, by him saying that, it gives legitimacy to Dr. Curry, her diagnosis, but also sounds like he's trying to just minimize, well, she just has the traits. The thing is, if she has the traits, still is or it could be a risk factor. That's like if we look at mental health in the lens of like physical health, you still should be concerned if you're pre-diabetic and not full-blown diabetic. That means there's some changes that need to be made. Okay. You can have stage 1 cancer or stage 4, but it's still adjustments. There's still therapies. There's still treatments that could be done. And if it's not taken care of, it can lead to, low prognosis. Same thing with, well, not same, but that's just a comparison or similar illustration for BPD. Now, my final thoughts on Amber Heard and her therapy notes being suppressed. So in the state of Virginia, I'm not a lawyer, but I did my best to look this up. But hearsay is a statement other than one made by the declarant. So the declarant is the person who made the statement. So it's a statement other than the one that you're saying while testifying at the trial or hearing, often evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So that's why they were excluded as hearsay, because it's just basically the therapist saying what someone else said, which is Amber Heard. So I know there were some exceptions, they said, to the hearsay and with professional testimony. Again, I'm not going to speak to that because I'm not an attorney. But what I can see from, working in the hospital as well as in private practice, these are my thoughts on Amber Heard wanting to admit that as evidence and discrediting the other medical professionals. So I feel like, and this is speculation, but I feel like the reason she's so adamant to show us these papers is that in her mind, she really does think this proves something. I know she said in an audio to JD, if you watch any of my other videos on the gaslighting, there was, I think in part 1, where she said, people aren't going to believe that I kept all this evidence and just saved it up for the right time, or that I was either in a fight club. Well, the only reason people take pictures over 5 years or 10 years or 20 or save text messages or audio is a documentation. It is a record. You are creating a record for something, whether you're going to go to the police with it, which is ideal, because if someone is abusing you and they're, a danger to the community or to other people, I would hope that at some point you would want to, maybe not, because not everyone is going to want to put that out there. And the system can be very triggering and re-traumatizing. And so, whatever someone chooses to do, it just is what it is. But if you are saving up pictures and text messages, that means you are documenting it for something. And it's like she kept a record of her own reality or things that would support what she perceived happened. You can tell your therapist anything you want to. It is a judgment free. It is a safe place, because we have to build a therapeutic rapport, because our goal is not to find out whether you're a liar or, some of that stuff will come out, but it's really to get you to a place where you can function. She needs to understand that the more that you discredit your medical records, you're just discrediting yourself and showing that you're inconsistent, because RN, doctor, therapists are all reporting what you tell us. We have no reason to want to make a story up and just throw things in there. It's a very serious job, and most people do take that seriously because that's our livelihood. That's how we make money. We invested so much time and money to get to that point, and it takes more time and money to keep that license. And again, Aaron Filati's still in good standing. I haven't checked the others, so I just really don't see the point of it. So those were my thoughts on the suppressed evidence. Sorry it took me so while to get this video out. If you guys enjoy the content, please like, share, subscribe, and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on the medical records and her therapist notes, and I'll see you on the next video.